Have you ever pictured what it would be like to live as a fish instead of a human? Let's try it. Picture yourself as an Atlantic salmon, the fish you see here. Your goal? Complete your life cycle by moving from the ocean you inhabit to the river you were born in to reproduce. You may think this process would go along swimmingly, with little struggle, but this is not the case. The rivers you travel up are being polluted and destroyed. The invasive alewives that you feed on along the way are causing defects and hurting your chances at survival and reproduction. Even if you get past both of these obstacles, you suddenly come across a dam, blocking your chances at reproduction. This is the reality for many Atlantic salmon and shows some causes of their population decline. As you can see from this graph from the Atlantic Salmon Federation, Atlantic salmon populations in New England have been on the decline for the past few decades and have fallen below conservation requirements. There have been fluctuations in their populations, and with community help and innovative solutions, we can work to increase Atlantic salmon populations. So how do we decrease alewife populations? A lot of it comes down to bait fish regulations. Oftentimes, when alewives are entering waters that they do not belong in, it's because fishermen are using them as bait, and then when they're done, they simply release them back into the water. For this reason, we have bait fish regulations, which basically says that you can't do that. However, we need these fishermen to more strictly adhere to these regulations. In order to do this, we need to increase education on the issue, putting salmon at the face of the issue. This can be done through social media movements or through physical signage at popular fishing spots. When Atlantic salmon feed on this type of fish over a long period of time, their thiamine or vitamin B1 levels decrease, which can lead to defects that cause them to not be able to swim properly and lower the chances of survival for their eggs. A study done in Lake Champlain in 2020 demonstrated this, with eggs that had even 2 nanomoles per gram of thiamine surviving for 1,139 days, while those with 0 nanomoles per gram of thiamine only lasted for 730 days. A 409-day difference, which is a little over a year. This shows that in order to increase populations of Atlantic salmon, we must decrease the populations of invasive alewives.
Dam construction boomed during the 1900s. However, as these dams were constructed, environmentalists realized that there were downsides, specifically for the Atlantic salmon population. Salmon, along with multiple other fish species, rely on unobstructed waterways in order to reach ancestral breeding grounds where they reproduce. With the construction of dams, however, salmon were unable to reach these breeding grounds, leading to a decrease in population. Dams can impact salmon populations in a number of ways, including, as just mentioned, the actual blockage of waterways leading to ancestral breeding grounds, but also increased predation due to the fish being caught in a smaller area with nowhere to go. Dams can also alter the river flow, which can affect salmon's ability to tell when and where to go for their salmon runs. Things that we should consider doing to help salmon repopulate, revolving dams at least, is we should consider removing dams. However, sometimes this is an unideal situation, and so if we can't remove the dam, we can always add a fish ladder or lift, essentially just infrastructure that allows the fish to move through the dam without actually removing the dam. We should also, in the future, be considering ceasing to build dams, or at the very least, taking into consideration the fact that fish regularly migrate through these waters in order to reach breeding grounds.
Following the rapid incline in human population growth over the past 2 centuries, we've seen many salmon fisheries begin to suffer as we remove riparian buffers, which are the vegetated areas around streams, as we expand our territory and access to these natural resources. These riparian areas provide protection against erosion as well as habitat for biodiversity. And as humans develop as a species, we see areas like this as a means for capital gain. But a lot of times that means taking advantage of them by removing and clearing them to support our land use decisions. So looking at them in a utilitarian perspective can lead to some decline in those benefits. As we continue to dump our waste and implement impervious surfaces that accumulate nutrients and pollute salmon's waters, not only do we harm the salmon populations, but we also harm the populations of their prey. And clearly it's not with malice or hatred for nature, but we can all be held accountable. As we expand our territories and cut down these areas, we remove habitat for young salmon to use as a nursery, as well as vegetation that provides the streams with the essential shade they need to keep them cool and clean, which salmon rely on to survive. Through community action and awareness, we can help to restore these riparian buffer areas and give young salmon a place to grow up and the population a place to feed. Restoring riparian buffers gives these nutrients somewhere constructive to go as they fuel the plant growth rather than eutrophication and salinity within the stream.
Let's recap what we went over. Atlantic salmon populations are dropping in New England for 3 main reasons: dams, invasive alewives, and habitat loss/pollution. Hope is not lost for Atlantic salmon in New England, but in order to restore their populations, we need your help. There are several organizations doing important work to rehabilitate these populations, like the Atlantic Salmon Federation, the Down East Salmon Federation, and the North Atlantic Salmon Conservation Organization. Consider donating your time or money to these places. You can also reach out to your local Parks and Recreation Service and organize efforts to increase education on Atlantic salmon. By working together, we can help restore the populations of these vital keystone fish that call New England's waters home.